Hey guys, it's BlockchainBrad. Today I'm honoured to speak with OriginTrail. They are a key startup in the blockchain domain. And with me I have two key founders of OriginTrail. We have Tomaž and we also have Žiga. Thank you guys for being on the channel today.
Hey Brad, great to be here. Thanks for having us.
No problem at all, mate. Thank you for also allowing me to have this opportunity to speak with you. Now, guys, I wanted to talk to you about the slogan itself. Let's start with that. Now, it says that you are enabling businesses to speak the same language with integrity. Now, let's start with perhaps what all this is about. It's reasonably clear that you represent integrity, but what does that mean when it comes to blockchain?
Yeah, so I think it all goes back to 2011 when we started a small-scale student project working for a group of farmers that were selling organic meat under their own brand. And not only we designed their brand, but we also wanted to put transparency in the middle of their communication strategy. And that's why we had to dig deeper. We had to go into their abattoirs. We had to go into their supply chains because the idea was to display more information to shoppers, to expand on the scope of the things that companies communicate to their stakeholders, and shoppers obviously being one of the most important stakeholders here. Mm-hmm. So this kind of slogan dates back to those days where we wanted to show more to buyers, and we effectively managed to do that by developing a very rudimentary system which allowed shoppers to scan a QR code on a pack of beef product, and this would then give them more information about the provenance of that meat. Now, that was still a very student project back then. We didn't have a company or anything, but then after 3 years, back in 2014, we decided to continue on that student project, and this is when we launched a more serious project, a more scalable project called OriginTrail. And OriginTrail, it was basically a continuation of this promise, which is allowing businesses to speak the same language, and meaning the same language using the same standards for communication. Interoperability in data standards is highly important here because whatever technology you use, and blockchain is not an exception, if data is not standardized, if data is not model according to certain standards, then it's a garbage in, garbage out system. So that's why we need the same language, and in order to kind of increase the integrity of whatever has been communicated about, let's say, a meat or whatever food product we talk about. It's not only the food products that we are involved in, but just taking this as an example. So whatever you communicate about along this supply chain, either amongst the partners in the supply chain or manufacturer to consumers, you need to raise the integrity of the information, of the data. And
right. I just want to interrupt you there because there's so much we're going to unpack, and we've got plenty of time. But I want to talk to you about whether or not you guys represent what I would deem as blockchain pragmatism. Are you born from that school of thought where it was a real need? So let's move across now to the conversation. Perhaps Tomaž, you could help me out here. Let's discuss what motivated you with regard to pain points and what you saw in the marketplace that really showcases or prompts the need for this to even exist.
Yeah, I mean, it went from that aspiration to help businesses be more transparent. And the question that we received going through that was really about the integrity of the data that we were holding. So it was us as a central kind of entity in the middle, vouching for what we got from the producers and showing them to the consumers. But we never had that intention. We never really what we were aspiring for was more transparency. And so that was kind of what tilted us towards blockchain. And because we wanted to achieve that goal to answer that question. But when we started working with it, pragmatically, just using what was available, we saw that there are limitations as to how to use it for supply chains. And going back to the slogan, it's exactly that. So you had these businesses, because supply chain is never a single thing. It's always multiple companies, network, not even a chain. It's very complex, and you need to enable them to speak the same language. And looking at blockchain, it's more for transactions. transferring value or transferring certain digital assets from one entity to the other. But supply chains are not just about the transactions; they're about the data. You need to describe what happened, and we had this issue: how to enable them to speak the same language so they can have the same standards, but also with integrity. So that the second part was really how to enable to have more data to describe what happened. So how to provide that data scalability, which on the blockchain layer just wasn't available.
Right.
We were at the time just using just storing hashes of what we were receiving onto the chain, and even that was in tens of cents at the time, because the gas prices were a bit higher, just to have that functionality. So let alone if you would want to put on a couple of megabytes on on the entire network forever, of course that's going to be expensive because it has to be inherently. Right. But that it wasn't performing for us. So this is where we started for that layer that we started working on.
So Tomaž, in that sense, you're all about optimizing data in this age of datization and looking at also the valorization of data. Data is really valuable now. We see this in centralized entities. But I want to pull it back to the conversation of supply chain for those who may not know much about it. So Žiga, could we talk about what supply chains actually are all about? Why do they matter generically for those who perhaps don't understand the context?
Yeah. Now, supply chain, it might kind of insinuate the word itself that it's a chain. But obviously, in this globalized world, supply chains are basically networks of different stakeholders, starting from primary producers, if we're talking about food, and then continuing towards manufacturing, distribution, and along this chain, you would also have auxiliary services, and the entire network of all those stakeholders is somehow responsible for an end product, which is then going to be consumed by a consumer. But the problem here is that oftentimes the supply chains are so fragmented because it's very hard for each and every stakeholder to communicate everything about the product, and oftentimes it's also not about inability of a specific stakeholder within the supply chain. It's rather a will to conceal something about the product. So it's about balancing the kind of the interests in the supply chains. From one angle, we would like to provide tools to honest supply chain stakeholders to reveal more about their products. But on the other hand, we need to also take care of those actors that are not not able or willing to use that kind of system. And this is where we're waiting also for regulation to kick in. Now, right. If we are going to the willing, we're also working on specific use cases here in Europe for the farming sector, whereby those stakeholders they oftentimes lack kind of capital support to integrate these kind of systems. And that's why we decided to become part of a European-wide consortium called SmartAgriHubs. And this European-wide consortium also received quite massive funding from the European Commission, and we're now being kind of the lead blockchain partner to that consortium to basically allow European farmers to start using blockchain mostly for traceability purposes in their parts of the supply chains. So we're kind of using different tactics to kind of to tackle supply chains from as broad angle as possible. And supply chain, as I pointed out initially, it's a network, and that's why we are tackling the network from different verticals. So right. These verticals are tackling different industries because supply chain is everything basically. Supply chains are generating 2/3 of the world's GDP, and they are very much entangled. And having a very low level technology and origin protocol as such is a very base layer technology. We also need to take care of the use cases for different verticals in supply chains, and that's why we're leveraging different strategies here. We're working with partners that we can talk about more in the later section.
Sorry,
enhance the capabilities of people by also kind of enticing different developers and companies to start building dApps on top of the protocol. And one of the examples of our kind of aspirations here is also an OpenCall. And this is where I would like to kind of motivate our community to register for the voting. We have, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we had 35 great projects that are, you know, trying to compete for the vote, for each and every vote from a community. And so OpenCall is another example of how we're trying to kind of enhance the capabilities of this technology stack that we are building. And last but not least, we also need to work with governments. And this is where we are trying to leverage different approaches. One of them is the one that I already mentioned through the European Commission. And the kind of the most straightforward one is from talking to different also governmental bodies here in Europe, but also elsewhere.
Sure. I'm going to stop you there for a moment because there's a whole lot of information there that you explained, Žiga, but I want to pull it back to some of the keywords. You mentioned government, you mentioned Europe, you mentioned regulation. So let's start there for a moment. Now, Tomaž, you're in Europe. It's quite pro-utility in terms of token utility and blockchain itself. It's different in many jurisdictions around the world. So what's the sentiment? Talk us through that in Europe.
Yeah. In terms of regulation and the sentiment around blockchain projects and tokens generally, I think there's a lot of learning still going on, but people are keeping an open mind. So even the governments, they're looking to understand and to really kind of, I mean, it's not an easy task by any means, you know, to be in a position to have to write a regulation or to write rules for something like as innovative as decentralized ledger technologies are, especially because there's so many nuances to the different tokens being created. You know, not all digital assets carry the same, obviously they don't have the same utility or they don't have the same content. So separating what is what and classifying what is what and how do you really approach what is really innovative and new, what is just old thing packed in a new wrapping and kind of being sold as something else, that requires a lot of work and focus. But I think that the regulators around Europe are willing to put that work in, especially because they do see a tangible value in implementing this technology in use cases. And you know, they're even funding, like the thing that Žiga mentioned was in SmartAgriHubs, is they've set aside some funds that are directly aimed towards utilizing this technology in the real economy. And when it comes to agriculture, obviously, similar to any other supply chain ecosystem, if you look at it like that, it's there's the need to just have more transparency. And until now, there's always one actor aggregating a lot of data. And as soon as that starts to happen, then the motivation for others to share starts to decrease rapidly. And people just don't want to give up something that they don't know what's the value that they're getting back to, especially if they have to tailor it specifically for that particular actor. But if you think of it more decentralized perspective, looking at, so I can know that I can share it to different sites, plus I keep the ownership, then you kind of have the reverse situation. And for a farmer, it starts to make more sense. So
you're bringing together all those different, what would be silos, essentially, those independent silos of information. You're bridging the gap and making it all seamless and connected. But what's the benefit economically for, say, for example, a farmer, as you mentioned? Is there any additional economic benefit to utilizing something like blockchain for those who, often, are paying significant fees, or they're, that in the traditional marketplaces, there's a lot of middlemen, essentially, that may be superfluous?
I totally agree. And here, I mean, you were speaking about the valorization of the data. Now it's being appropriated by maybe some other companies. Whereas if you would have a system like that in place, a farmer could make use of a very valuable data that's valuable for other partners along the supply chain. It's not just the end consumer. It's very useful, let's say, for a retailer to know how ripe certain products are on the field, so they can prepare all of their activities more accurately. And it goes for every point in that network that you can make use of greater transparency. But you need to create a certain position where people are willing to share and they're able to share very easily. Only then they will be able to do it. Because at the end, it's Bitcoin was able to go so quickly because there was a community of people understanding why Bitcoin has value, in time when it started to grow. And it's similar to other, let's say, platforms that have smart contracts capabilities. People realize what that is, and that particular community can utilize that. Similar in supply chains, we need to find networks that will be able to generate the network effect, and that's how you go about it. So initiatives like the one from European unions are they're positive because you're able to access a network, and if you're able to tell them how they can create value within that network, then that can start spreading out. But you need to find that kind of initial network, because one-to-one, it's very easy to create an argument that DLT approach doesn't make sense, because obviously if I'm only sending something to you and you're only sending something to me, and that's the entirety of the world that exists, it doesn't make sense for us to create a very complex DLT structure.
Sure.
But as soon as you start to kind of have these separated multi-organizational settings, that's when it starts to kind of become more apparent.
Right.
So they need to share data as well. And they need to share data in different formats. And this is creating a lot of costs for them. And since they are sharing data with multiple stakeholders, they need to structure data differently. And this is causing headaches for them. I'm also coming from a farm. My family has a farm. And, there are a lot of kind of forms they need to fill in for inspections. And you need to kind of compliance, a lot of things that you need to do as a farmer, if we take a farmer for as an example. And what we can do here with a protocol, we can unify data, so the models for data sharing, because oftentimes farmers would share basically the same information with different stakeholders, although in a different data format. And this is where we already see kind of a efficiency gain. Yeah. If we start implementing a protocol at the farming level. Another thing is that from a body that is actually taking care of the compliance of for a group of farmers, they can actually pull that data from a different body using, again, the same standard. And because there is an integrity layer, which is actually vouching that there is a consensus check between a group of farmers and another compliance body, then an external compliance body can be sure that the data has not been changed, and they can actually pull the data out, not only the hashes. It's basically the data sets. It's a more bulky set of data. Right. So this is kind of on top of my head why you can see we can do in the farming sector. But of course, as we move forward, we see that we have stakeholders coming to us, and we have even been working with a stakeholder from a betting industry. And now we have those stakeholders proposing new use cases because they can see a very base layer technology, a protocol, and they can immediately kind of they immediately click where this protocol can be used within their own setting. So yeah, right. It's quite diverse.
One of the things I did want to talk to you both about, though, is you mentioned Bitcoin, and I really appreciate the detail you've gone into, essentially what prompted you, and also the value points. Just in that discussion, then you were talking about those verifications and the value in which those interconnections you can make can be for real use case. But in that respect, let's talk about now going beyond Bitcoin, because Bitcoin essentially right now is categorized as what we would argue as an SOV. In its current form and function, it isn't essentially that global currency that some would espouse it needs to be. But in the real world of business, everything's different. So given that people are already in world economies that have their own currencies, do you argue, in what you're trying to do, that you are really going beyond that narrative of SOV and speculation into the real world of transactions that mean something?
Yeah, I mean, we came from that aspect. So we needed something that could provide data integrity layer, and this is what we set out to kind of do with the protocol, because that part was kind of missing. From our perspective, it's really about how to make these data transfers and data exchanges run seamlessly, so you have the same interoperability language. Give them integrity, so they are decentralized to a point that they're tamper proof, but they need to also be cost efficient, because if especially like for something like food industry, it's crazy. You can't add additional cost because it's already, the margins are super tight. So, and also other businesses, they won't pay insane amounts for if the value, like it needs to correspond. So you need to kind of have that cost efficiency in place, and all of this kind of, and the privacy, obviously, it's also a big issue when it comes to businesses. So from our perspective, it's less tilted to just towards transactions in terms of moving a digital asset. It's more, transactions in our head are more about data transactions. So how to describe what happened, how to give that data in a larger sense, like, not just the tiny transaction bit, but like a bigger description, how to give that integrity. And this is definitely something that I think we're moving beyond just beyond store of value functionality towards something that businesses can kind of use for this use case. So yeah, for the supply chain transparency, or let's say data integrity use case. But
sure.
That's working towards that.
And what's exciting also is that we're hearing more and more of the narrative of adoption and usership as being paramount to, say, for example, the best tech out there. Because obviously we've seen in bear markets in history, the likes of Google and Amazon, they've really thrived in instances where they perhaps weren't the best tech, but they had the combination of all those factors. So I did want to talk to you at that with regard to your strategies for adoption. Perhaps and are you starting in Europe? But where are you targeting? Where are you looking to really gain the attention of those that can utilize your services and your technology?
Yeah, we started off from food supply chains. And even before we even considered doing an ICO, we already had paying customers. So we basically, right now we are transitioning all the paying customers, even from the ICO, before the ICO era, onto the mainnet. So about the kind of the overall strategy to increase adoption, we are being very active, not only in Europe, but also in Asia. Most oftentimes we go to Asia. Right now we also are discovering new possibilities in the US. But from a high level perspective, we are trying to deploy a protocol globally. Already before ICO, we went to China. We stayed there for a few months, and we managed to implement an alpha network of the protocol into a supply chain of an online retailer. And this kind of use case was also noticed by the Walmart Food Safety Collaboration Center initiative called, I think, Innovation Pipeline. It was sort of an incubator, accelerator for different food safety related initiatives. And out of, I think, 200 companies, we were selected to become one of 12 participants of their inaugural Innovation Pipeline program. And out of those 12 projects, we were also selected as one of 3 winning solutions, one of 3 kind of best solutions tackling food safety issues in Chinese market. And although we were kind of new actors in that market, we immediately gained a lot of recognition. And this all took us also to Hong Kong. And right now we are establishing presence in Hong Kong as well, because Hong Kong, obviously Slovenia, cannot match to Hong Kong in terms of the closeness to bigger markets. And having Hong Kong, having presence there also allows us to not only tap into different partnerships, which might be significant for a middle term plans. Because those partnerships are much bigger than the ones that we had on board a year ago. So we need to work quite a lot with them. That's why presence is highly required. So having them, and also potentially in the future having financial investors on board, because we see that oftentimes companies would like to develop specific solutions tailored for their vertical only. And now we see there is a lot of motivation that they would even like to partner up and have a company which is specifically tasked to develop a solution on top of the protocol for their own vertical. And then we also see that there are some financial actors that would like to chip in some capital. So what we see right now, and we're very happy to see that, is we have not only the industry, but also people that would like to fund the ecosystem, not only via the means of purchasing the token, but from the other angle, chipping into a use case, which is actually leveraging the protocol. So this is one of the ways that we see that the adoption will take place in the future. But of course, we're trying to set our foot into many places. Tomaž recently came back from Brisbane. He was also there talking to, I think, organic beef producers.
Was that in Australia?
Yeah.
Oh, I live very close to Brisbane, so that's quite interesting that you were there and I was here.
Maybe I'll just two things that going back also to what you said is on the ecosystem side that we're kind of trying to foster. One is the companies or the enterprises or corpos that have the ideas for their particular niche or vertical that they would like to kind of work on using the protocol. And here bear market is great in a way because they're coming for the tech, they're coming for the value. No, we don't discuss speculative values of any asset on the meetings, which is
awesome.
Refreshing.
And Tomaž, I really want to talk to you on that. So let's collaborate here on this point. And I'm sorry to interject, but I really do want to ask you this. Now, when enterprises and businesses do come to you, as you're mentioning, obviously their agenda, as Žiga was alluding to, often they want to privatize that with some sort of private chain design. And we see that with past examples of databases, essentially. So how are you going to integrate these customization demands that they have? Because they certainly have it and they want to have their own private mechanisms. They want to be able to control their own data. How do you enable that in your technology, given that you're public?
Yeah, that's a very, I think, an important aspect generally as an industry for everyone. And here it's really understanding the value that they're looking for and what they want to achieve. But also you have to explain what's the value of the DLT approach that you're bringing. So, because if it is in the end just a centralized solution, then it's probably cheaper.
Not changing anything.
Then it's faster. Just do it, using the legacy systems, and you'll be fine. But at the same time, just taking a maximalist approach in a way, it can also backfire on you because you just won't be able to achieve certain things. So what kind of the approach that we think it's very prudent is that you kind of have to understand what's the value. So where do you go for the integrity? In our eyes, it's integrity of the data, right? So what type of integrity of the data we're going for? In which data sets do you want to, what has to go public, what needs to stay private because it's the proprietary solution for someone, for a company, and kind of it's a scale. It's not just 1 and 0. So you look on this scale how to really find the sweet spot that's comfortable, but also creates value and obviously uses the technology, because otherwise we are not interested in working with something. And on the same way is the protocol itself needs to be neutral, needs to be open source, and needs to be kind of it can't be proprietary by design. So that's impossible, similar to as a blockchain layer. But what you can have as a proprietary thing is for them a particular product built using this technology. And here, if it's a DApp, but it's not really a D app. It's just an application using a decentralized technology, and that can be a proprietary software, and probably should be, because that's the way you would fund it also. Right. So kind of making those distinctions in the tech stack will also become more apparent, I guess, when we go forward.
Sure. And Tomaž, I did want to ask you, that internal app, as you're talking about, that's something that you've no doubt created to actualize this seamless collaboration with enterprise parties. Now, clearly that would be much like a blockchain as service in that design. Would you be creating revenue if you're engaging with these enterprise parties in that instance, utilizing this DApp service?
Yeah, so that's also a very good point, and I think it goes into kind of what the revenue streams are and that. So on the protocol level, there's no business model, because it can't be and it shouldn't be. at least in our eyes. So that's totally, it should be neutral and open source.
Right.
But then going forward, when you're creating value for a certain corporation or a certain enterprise or company or even an end user, obviously you're doing something that's not a protocol. So if it has a proprietary nature, obviously there's also a revenue stream attached to that. So, and it's also a way of kind of, you know, for us, we've been a for-profit entity before, and it's kind of a continuation of how we think. If we create value, obviously you build that value.
Right.
But it is separated from the open source kind of approach. And here you have something that's technology that needs to be open source to provide that value. But then, of course, if you're creating something for an enterprise, then definitely you charge that. And app or what, but it really comes to, you know, nuances again. What are you creating for them?
And Žiga, you know, Tomaž is raising a really important point here, is that our Origin Trail protocol is really about that dual design. It's not just simply that open source technological provision for the globe that's offered freely, but it's also trying to establish that sustainability model, being for profit. You're here for the long term. Is it fair to say as well, Žiga, that you couldn't do this without having something like this, where you could create revenue? And on that note, talk us through, you know, why perhaps you're better than IBM, because obviously they have, you know, similar outfits and others like them.
Yeah, so the first part of the question, I'll talk about IBM a bit later. It's necessary. So when we used blockchain back in the past for the existing use cases we had from 2014 on and up until 2017, we saw that using merely blockchain layer. So we started using, when we started using Ethereum public network, we saw that merely hashing files, so fingerprinting the files that are being exchanged between us and the manufacturers or distributors in the supply chains that we examined back then, is not enough, and it's too costly, and it's not scalable, and oftentimes partners are not willing to share data because they were afraid that they might lose competitive advantage if they share too much. Hence, there was a need for this protocol, and this is when we saw that without having a digital asset, which we call Trace, you are basically not creating a network which is decentralized. And this is perhaps also a touch point that is worth discovering in terms of a difference between us and IBM and other projects that are based on Hyperledger Fabric, for example. So decentralization is needed if you would like to increase integrity in supply chains. And having Trace is kind of one of preconditions to have this decentralization. And of course, one of kind of perks of having a digital asset is also that you can crowd fund a project, and that's why it made sense for us to to do it via the token token generation event.
Right, the TGE.
So that's a reflection point for the protocol. Having said that, of course, we had revenue streams from before, and now we are expanding on those revenue streams. We have been expanding on those revenue streams, and obviously also being involved in European projects, we are receiving funds from European Commission. It's something that to this point we are able to cover at least business development costs, and this is highly important. And now expanding on this revenue, also having additional customers which are requesting for not only for us to implement the protocol in their supply chain setting, but also provide different services such as education, consulting, because obviously integrating a blockchain related solution does not only require you to go into a company and use this blockchain shiny solution you just take off the shelf and you integrate it. You oftentimes need to educate those companies. So this is also another revenue stream that we have, and our goal, or kind of a not only a wishful thinking, but something that we are working towards, is to be 100% self-sustainable by the end of this year. And it's not something that we would like to do just to complete the protocol with the proceeds that we have. I know that one of your questions is also referring to the Runway, which is being discussed quite a lot nowadays, not only in relation to our team, but I suspect that also in relation to other projects in an industry. It's very important to point out that we are going towards the direction of self-sustaining. Not only the project, but it's basically an ecosystem of different stakeholders, and at the same time, we would like to use those proceeds that we have from the last year's ICO for future developments of the protocol. So we have already launched the mainnet, and the fundamentals of this mainnet can be used to generate revenue for an ecosystem. And at the same time, we need to have this long-term vision, which will allow us to make upgrades to the protocol in the future, past 2020. And that's why we'd like to generate as much of revenues in this year, so we can save those proceeds that we have from the TGE for 2020 and the future. And we believe that the situation in the market is as bloody as it is right now. It's not going to last forever. Of course, we see that the situation might improve in 2020, and this is where we see that it would make sense for us also to propose certain new upgrades to the protocol. Because obviously in this year we are going to receive a lot of feedback, and we have received a lot of feedback from the user community, and this is where it will be very important to have funds to continue upgrading the protocol. So it's about sustainability. And one of your questions was why did you raise money if you had revenues? So it's you need the digital asset to as a premise for as a core premise for decentralization, and B, it's when you have a digital asset, you also have a community. And one of the good thing is we also had some companies buying into the token. Also at the token generation event level. And basically right now we're sitting in the highest office in Slovenia, and it's positioned in the middle of a logistics center. It's we can walk around a bit. Sometimes I love walking around when we have internet.
Yeah, that'd be great. If you want to show us, that'd be fantastic, because obviously I just want to jump in and say that hi everyone, really great to meet you all. So obviously, Žiga, the point that by showing this is a real company. It is in the middle of Slovenia in a very prominent place. Great view, looks awesome.
The point I was trying to make. So we are in the middle of a logistics center, and the company that is basically giving us out this space is also the user of the protocol. And already at the inception point of the protocol, they were highly convinced that the protocol might be used in their logistics services. And
so are they also an investor?
Come again?
Are they also one of the key investors in your protocol?
We could not call them key investors, but they were participants. One of the participants.
I totally respect that, but I'm pretty blunt, so I call them what it is. And at the beginning, even though TGEs essentially are utility tokens, that's how they deem it. So I'll just be real. You don't have to comment, but that's essentially how they look at it, because they do hope for profit in the future. So are they involved in the TGE?
Yeah, but for the point of making a use case for their company now using the protocol for the value of the protocol, not for the speculative value. So that was the point, is that we have companies holding Trace that are looking to use it for the protocol's value, and they want to make their use cases, and they kind of were let's say open-minded enough to understand that that could have an impact on their business in the future, to kind of enter early and kind of secure themselves a certain
I think that's a really prudent thing that you guys have done as well. So let's talk about that. Now, often VCs get involved. They have no interest in your token longitudinally. They just want to capitalize on the profit. When you engage with companies like this logistics company that have afforded you this opportunity to have this awesome office, it's really smart to be engaging in partnerships where they have a genuine interest in the actual utility. So was this a commonplace thing that you did in your TGE? I want to go back and find out all the ins and outs of the raise, and in terms of who supported your raise and how much funds you have left from that TGE.
Yeah, I mean, we've the communication and the presentations that we did, and it was mostly focused on, we did a lot of legwork, flying around and attending different meetups and talking to people directly, was focused on the value of the protocol and how we came about to understand what is actually needed in the marketplace and why this is an useful stuff to do. Mm-hmm. So we attracted more or less people from that from that side. We never focused on speculative stuff, and it's you can check that in terms of what we were communicating, what we still are communicating, and where we see the value of the token is the value of the ecosystem. So we see the value if the entire OriginTrail ecosystem makes sense because of the underlying technology of that the protocol is, then obviously it will grow in the value itself as well. But that's the premise. There is the underlying value of the technology that it delivers, because it's needed in the space. So this is why we attracted kind of people like that, and that even the company that we're in here now. And it's not when it comes to like VCs, we had a lot of let's say pure investor approaches, but we never really engaged. For the token generation event, is what we were talking about, is the token's value in terms of the technology. And there were people wanting to invest in the company, in OriginTrail Ltd, but it's not profit. This is not for profit. It's not, there's the value of the company is just to bring this technology to life via this the event, by the token generation that we did. It's not have a business model. It's not to create revenues. It's not, this company it's not for profit. It's
sure. But let's talk about now the token, because often when people do look at this as we can use other words, but I do say investment. So when they look at the token generation event, you were looking as, you were looking at all those prospective supporters of the utility for the long term. So you really didn't want to attract those who just wanted that short-term perspective. Now, let's talk about the correlation for a moment between your token and business growth. I'd really like to hear from both of you how you explain that, because it's quite an anomaly, given that often when people do take part in what is arguably a very experimental and speculative step forward by participating in a TGE, how do people correlate in their understanding between the token value and your business growth as you build?
Yeah, so I think it's if you're talking the business when we're working with the corporates, let's say creating value for them that results in us invoicing something.
Right, through your blockchain and service model.
Yeah, let's say that, but that side is us being understanding of the technology and utilizing it. So anyone can use the same open source technology that was created through a token generation event to offer similar services. We're even engaged, we're actively proponing that. We have an OpenCall out right now with 35 service providing companies that they want to use the protocol to create their own services, their own offerings in their particular understanding and domain. So we're very, very actively facilitating the growth of this ecosystem with TraceAlliance that was also kind of bringing more businesses in to use it. So the correlation of the growth of the ecosystem is something that should be creating a bigger value for the entire ecosystem together. Tomaž, what about the token in that respect?
You mentioned that there should be correlation. So will that be reflected also in the token itself?
It should reflect in the demand for the token. So that's because even now, let's say we just launched the mainnet, and there's already over 2 million traces that's staked in the smart contract that's now that's performing out of the 500 million that were created. So we're talking 1 month since the release. So it's very, very early, and it's a testing phase also for anyone using that. But it's already there. So the demand has already started being created for the use of the protocol. And as the demand increases, obviously there's going to be it's a finite resource. So and that's why you have the scarcity kick in, and the more value, the bigger the ecosystem is.
I see. And Žiga, can I just ask you, is that reflected in the performance of the token now? Because if we could talk about the growth of some of the dApps, you guys have mentioned that different parties are quite interested in utilizing your open source tech. So again, as this ecosystem that is OriginTrail builds out and more developers engage with your technologies, are we seeing that reflected in your tokenomics now, or in the graphs of movement from point A to B over time?
As Tomaž pointed out, the mainnet is quite nascent. We launched mainnet in December, and we need to wait out a bit for all the kind of the business related efforts to kick in terms of seeing the effects in the demand for the token. The ecosystem is growing. We started off, so when we did our own ICO, that was in January 2017, and I believe we had 1,500. I'm sorry,
1,184.
Yeah, but then the number of participants holding the token grew rapidly. It went up to I think 15,000. And right now,
quite substantial.
Yeah. It was mostly thanks to all people talking nicely about the project. Those were also different times. But now what we need to take care of is the technology and the real world adoption, and this is what we're working on. So we cannot expect that in this bearish market, with the overall bearish sentiment, a lot of people will be jumping into any of the project, not even ours. And this is where we need to understand that we need a bit of time to start, seeing the results of the past year, and not the results of the past year in terms of us talking at different crypto conferences. It's more about seeing the results of our engagements with different business partners, with different use cases that we have already built so far. And it will take some time, but we can already see that companies see value in the technology itself. They are not that much interested in the name of the digital asset that sits behind the system, but they are aware that some form of a digital asset is necessary as a voucher for decentralization.
Right. Well, obviously, it's an exciting time because your focus is on doing something real world. Let's talk now about the context of essentially interoperability, the scope of this and how far it can reach out. That obviously there's a multitude of different blockchains. I really did want to talk to you also, Tomaž, about the potential for privatized entities like IBM doing all of this without even a token. So some argue that interoperability is not even necessary with regard to tokenization. Some argue that it is. What are your thoughts on that as you expand and interconnect with other blockchain-related entities?
It really comes down to the things that we were talking also before, is the flexibility of understanding in what technology are you using for what purpose, and if you are looking towards a decentralization for the integrity. In some use cases, the consortium settings are not performing well enough. So you will need a sort of a public network. And in that sense, then you need to have some way to manage these relations. So you need to have a digital asset, and then you need to have a token, and then it makes sense.
Right.
But it doesn't mean that the consortium chains won't exist or they're useless. We also partnered with Oracle at the end of the last year, which we see as a huge potential of bridging the legacy world with kind of the DLTs, but also them understanding the value of the public, which maybe is not that visible, at least until now in the IBM's case. But we have a good experience with Oracle's team, understanding why having something like ODN next to the consortium makes sense, and it brings value, and how that can translate into useful value created use cases for their clients, which in the end is where we want to see the innovation happen, not just on theoretical sense, but really practical. And here you come to really interoperability becomes a challenge not only for interoperability of blockchains, but also interoperability of legacy system with the DLTs. So how to create that? Because changing legacy, that's the worst thing to say to any company. They'll say no to any project, more like if you'll say you have to rip and replace. That's very, very painful. So how to this is what OriginTrail kind of focuses on, how to make the company not change their ways of doing things, but be able to reap the value of a decentralized technology.
I think you raised a really good point there, because if you don't do it that way and you make it too challenging for transition, again, the uptake won't follow through and you will not get the benefits, and also the expansion. So with regard to, your roadmap and your intentions of expansion, are you on target right now, guys?
So we've had a really, really long, a year-long sprint, let's say like that, to come to the mainnet. So we obviously pushed it back for for a quarter, but then we released it. We were ready to, kind of the code-wise, we were there, but we had to do some more tests to it. So we didn't want to rush it. So in the end, it was like 1 month later, I think, or 2 months later, that we released the first version of the mainnet, which was a very big milestone, obviously. And I think we even received or were between one of the top most active teams in terms of GitHub activity with the development side. So the team has really performed well up to this point in terms of the technical milestones, as well as we still have to keep our focus for the next year, which is going to be a very, very challenging year as well. The next release is also planned for the next quarter, which is going to be again now doing mainnet kind of releases is even more difficult, because you really need to make sure that you don't mess it up. Even we just saw with Ethereum that they had to the Constantinople came and they last minute saw that yeah, but it's life, it happens, and we need to understand that it's decentralization. Making decentralized networks is very hard because there's no room for mistakes, at least not sizable ones. So you have to make sure that everything is well prepared, and the next year is really going to be focused on aligning the needs of the corporates and the users of the protocol, and in enshrining that into the protocol itself. So when it comes to interoperability, what are the next standards that we need to have?
Absolutely.
When it comes to scalability, what is needed, but to align that with actual needs rather than with theoretical hypothesis. But
I appreciate your very no BS approach. Again, you're very driven by real world markets, and I think that's really reflected in the way in which you've approached not just your TGE, but the way you're moving ahead. Now, obviously, you need money. So how much money do you currently have based on the fact that you have raised funds? Did you cash out into fiat? Talk us through the perspective. Talk us through how much money you budgeted, and how long that's going to last for.
Yeah, we've obviously kept the execution of the project always as the highest priority of the team. So we have enough funds to deliver on all the promises that we made in terms of the technology, and then on building out the ecosystem, what we've set out to do from the TGE, and that's not in jeopardy. So which I think is a very important thing for making sure that the ecosystem sticks. And obviously, as a team, we've been also separated from the open source development thing. We've been a for-profit entity.
Let's pull it back though again to that TGE. What I really want to know though, forget about the revenue and that element of your for-profit design. The TGE was designed to showcase your technology fundamentally. So how much of that have you retained and have you planned for the future? Specifically, give us some numbers.
Yeah, we are revealing that information every quarterly report.
Okay.
What we can say right now is that we have more than half of the funds still left for the future developments. And at the same time, we have revenues coming in. We have at least certain departments of the company covered by the for-profit activities. So in terms of, so if a question is, do we have enough money to sustain development of the protocol? Yes. We have more than half of the funds still left. How we have cashed out back in the past, it's very difficult to give you an exact timetable. But we cashed out in fiat in order to cover all those costs in the past and for the foreseeable future as well.
That's great. That's what I wanted to know, because we will, everyone's worried whether or not every company has enough money.
Yeah. It's we are covered. We have enough funds not only to survive but actually to go beyond what was planned initially in the TGE roadmap. That's obviously we would like to carry this into the future. It's not 2020, it's 2025 and beyond that we would like to see this thing to be successful.
Right, and you're actually one of the very few who are already proving not only that trajectory into, or that focus in the real world for interacting with companies that can truly utilize you, but the revenue is really big, because that sets you apart from almost all blockchain startups, given that you're expanding that potential for sustainability beyond the reliance of your TGE. So congratulations for setting up that model. It is really important. Now let's talk a little bit more about your stack itself and how that's designed. So Tomaž, obviously you have a series of layers. You've got the application layer right through to the ODN and beyond. Tell us a little bit about the core assets, why this stack's important, the way you design the layering.
Yeah. Well, it came from the need that we were a centralized application requiring certain things which weren't available. So that's why we kind of wanted to address the things that we needed from the supply chain perspective. And like we said before, like supply chains are about data, and supply chains are about having this fragmented landscape which you need to connect somehow together. So there were three things. And it's an enterprise environment. So there were three things that we really needed to kind of achieve with the protocol. We needed to have it be interoperable with legacy cases. So we knew that like if it doesn't have that, then that's going to be very difficult to sustain. So we need to have the data interoperability. We needed to be scalable. So we need to have data scalability have it cost efficient as well. And we needed to have some sort of privacy layers to have different levels of encrypting the data. So what we created was basically a middleware layer, the ODN, which sits between the blockchain and the application layer, and it performs those functions. So it consists of two layers itself. So one is the network, which are basically the network of peer-to-peer nodes connected amongst each other. And the other one is the data layer, which is where the data, like it's a graph database that interconnects these different data sets together. So here is where interoperability is even more important, because you need to have data flow in from 5 different entities and have it be automatically connected together in a decentralized way, and then also be available for reading when someone needs information about that very easily. So that's why graph structure is very performant for this particular thing.
I see.
So yeah, that's how the stack kind of works. So you have the application, you have this data which connects the data sets together. The graph database itself is on the network of nodes that are peer-to-peer and decentralized. And below you have blockchain. In the blockchain itself, we use it for one for hashing. So you have the root hash is always on the blockchain. So it has even extra security kind of level of this immutability beyond any reasonable doubt.
Right.
Almost. And then we also use it for the logic. So the how the compensations between the data creators and the data holders work. So if you want to store something on the protocol, then obviously you use the smart contract to kind of interact with the network, and then you get your payouts as well through the smart contract. So that's all done on the blockchain layer. But the data itself sits on off-chain. but it's still a decentralized peer-to-peer network that holds the data itself.
Well, Žiga, I want to talk to you now about, again, the performance. One of the things I have looked at is that your technology is quite performant because you've done this layered design, and you've also separated some of that logic so that you can be performant in different layers. So talk us through, I guess, some comparatives. You know a lot about Ethereum, no doubt, and you certainly would know BTC. What kind of performance can you explain based on the way you designed this in the context of, say, for example, parallel scaling efforts? How are you performant in that context, as we see quite high quality layer 2 solutions coming forth now that can really address some of that performance problem?
Yeah, so from the inception of not only the protocol, but also inception of the white paper for the protocol, we were building a protocol with specific use cases in our minds. So we did not want to increase our aim was not to increase the scalability of the number of transactions in a way that Ethereum Foundation is attempting. What you wanted to do is to use the existing fundamentals of Bitcoin, of Ethereum, and even some other blockchains, enterprise blockchains, and look into where they fail if you want to apply them in specific use cases. And we saw that it's not about the scalability of the number of transactions per second. It's about the scalability of data that we need to take care of. And that's why we see that we're highly complementary to all the existing blockchain ecosystems that are currently being built, because we're not competing against their efforts to increase the scalability of the number of transactions per second. We are rather focused on specific use cases.
If we're really going comparison with, let's say, blockchain layer like Ethereum is, storing like 1 megabyte used to be, I don't know, a couple of thousands of US, 5,000 or even 50,000, I don't know.
Right.
So, but because you're storing something replicated on the entire network forever, but that's not performant for supply chains. What you want to do is you have to disable the possibility of collusion, and you need to the data can have an expiry date. So those are the two things that. So the replication, if just the three of us are one supply chain, we shouldn't be able to change it. So we will keep the replications, the three of us, plus we need to have number of nodes outside of us. So let's say at least 4 should be outside for us to not be able to collude, because even if we change it, the truth will always be outnumbering us that are here. But that's like 7 nodes versus 15,000 nodes. Obviously, that's way, way, way less. So order of magnitude less. And we can decide that we're going to compensate the nodes only for 3 months, because we are selling lettuce, and lettuce will die. And after 3 months, it doesn't make sense to keep this data. So we can say just for 3 months we will pay it, and then if you keep it, it's on your own kind of account. But then this also is like infinity minus 3 months is what you're saving if you're using OriginTrail versus if you're using a blockchain solution. So again, orders of magnitude.
Sure. And Tomaž, it makes sense what you guys are saying. Clearly, you've customized the blockchain to suit that specific use case of supply chain. And so everything's reflected on the needs basis for that. So kudos for really honing in on that speciality that is what you've designed. Can we now talk a little bit more about the alliance? You mentioned the TraceAlliance. What is that essentially? And what is the whole focus of building it out?
Yeah, it's TraceAlliance. It's a partnership organization. It serves like a knowledge hub, a knowledge transfer, and basically a partnership hub for companies that would like to learn more about the protocol itself, or find other companies that know a lot about it or would like to work with the protocol itself. So it was really designed because we had a lot of companies coming in and kind of with the willingness to work, and we found ourselves a lot of times connecting them or providing certain materials for them to be more easily interacting with the protocol. And instead of kind of doing that one by one, we said, hey, there's a potential to create an organization which could serve as a hub for all these type of inquiries. So this is how we started off and set it up. And then now it really kind of yeah, there are a couple of different communication channels that these companies can use to communicate amongst each other or with us. We have a channel of how to provide business-oriented materials to them from one single channel. So it's still evolving. So we'll see how it goes in the future as well.
How is it going? How is it going though, Tomaž? Is it successful so far?
We have over 60 members, I believe now. 75. Sorry, shit. Yeah.
That's so okay. And they're not just individuals, are they? They represent something larger than that.
Is one of those companies, for example. So there's the likes of really big companies. There are also really small companies in. It really depends, and it's a colorful bunch. So and also it's like you have service providers, you have companies that want to work on it, you have researchers, there's developers. It's really a different setting, but all of them with the same focus of wanting to use the technology to build something useful.
Right. Well, speaking of technology, I did want to talk to you, Žiga, a little bit more about some of the key features of your tech. Now, you have a Network Explorer. You also have a thing known as Vostok. Can you talk us through these things, these key features, and exactly what they're for in terms of the overall design?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we developed Network Explorer to allow participants either in supply chains or participants outside of supply chains that would like to tap into the data pool of the information that's being exchanged amongst the partners in supply chains, and also to build extra applications which would then also embed this Network Explorer, just to have someone just to kind of ensure that the data or the information that is being conveyed through that application can also be verified through the Network Explorer. So we can consider Network Explorer as a window into the protocol, into the network, basically.
Okay.
What's another question? The Vostok mainnet?
Yes.
Yeah. So the Vostok mainnet is kind of the first journey of ours towards launching something decentralized. And so far, we have gone through several stages in the development of the Vostok mainnet. Initially, we launched a testnet back in June. Yeah, and then after initial testing, we saw that we need to use some live data, which is most relevant to the protocol because of the standards that we embedded back then, GS1 standards and Web of Things. And then after a month of testing, we decided it makes sense to launch the Vostok in December. And Vostok is basically allowing you to quickly build a DApp. Without having an extensive knowledge about the blockchain, about coding blockchain related applications. So it's in a way it's the quickest way to become a company, software or and any other type of a company that can use and start using blockchain in a relevant environment. And of course, this is relevant to the supply chain specific use cases. So from a business perspective, this is, and it has been recognized by other companies as one of the most I'm not going to use affordable, but let's call it cost-efficient ways to build that.
And it sounds like also it's quite user-friendly and quite easy. As you mentioned, the important part is you don't need to have significant blockchain knowledge or developer skills, but you can onboard or interact in the ecosystem that you've created quite simply.
Yeah, I mean, already for the testnet, we launched certain tools that would allow individuals who like to set up a node to make it to ease out the process, and that's why we launched Houston back then. And right now we're also looking into different kind of user perspectives and how to alleviate this journey towards setting up their nodes. So we are working on user experience quite a lot right now.
To be honest, like the community side here as well is pretty awesome. So we have a Discord group which is really active, and there's a lot of really smart guys there that also help each other out. So it's not only our team that provides the answers, but rather this community thing is starting to grow, which is really, really great to see. There's even like websites that are similar to Network Explorer that are set up by the community, and it's really kind of a good kind of feedback to see that they're following the moves that we're making, and they're kind of participating actively.
And guys, you mentioned that community is growing. What about with regard to the concerns of regulation and the stifling of some of the growth with things like STOs, or just really trying to enforce a certain typology of new business and a new startup? Are you concerned at all about the top-down pressures of some jurisdictions such as the US?
I think it's like, if it's done well, it's inevitable, and it's probably even beneficial for the entire ecosystem, especially in terms of like when you're looking at enterprises. If we would have something that's more regulated, they would feel more comfortable interacting with certain things. So it's not like, we know that we've done things properly. We understand what we've created. I think the community also understands what we've created. They understand the value of the asset, and I mean what are the utility of it. So we're not, I don't think we should, or any projects that are doing things in a good way and like properly, following the regulation that's present at the time, should be afraid of that. Obviously we have to be engaged so that even the regulators don't make a move that would be detrimental to the entire industry, but I don't think it's in anyone's interest to do that. Rather kind of be engaged in that, and even you and content creators out there should be vocal and should be speaking about good stuff and good use cases and how things should be done, so that the regulators also have a point of reference as to what is generally accepted as a good use case. And on the other hand, we have certain stuff that's bad, and that should be punished.
Right.
But
yeah, we see it as our comparative advantage in a way, because the way we processed everything, it was done according to all the existing laws. And in the future, we believe that when regulators are going to become even more strict, and we believe that they will become, the things that we have done will actually become our comparative advantage vis-a-vis other projects.
That's a very interesting point. So in that respect, Žiga, is it likely that you're going to be able to move into the US market, which is one of the world's largest in this instance for even SupplyChain, given their whole economy? Are you opening yourself up to that because of the assiduousness of your endeavor to be compliant?
Yeah, I mean, for the use case purposes, there are no barriers for us to have an existence in the US market. Actually, we are also interacting with stakeholders from that market.
Like who? Give us some names.
Next week, man.
Next week. Fast forward. Come on.
Yeah. So the only hurdle we see here for the time being is an accounting hurdle, because companies oftentimes they don't know what the standards are for keeping digital assets on their books. So this is sometimes discouraging them to start using. So it's again a user experience point of view. It's not that much of a regulatory point of view.
So clearly you're building out this reality of more partnerships because of the fact that you've been so compliant. You've mentioned Asia as a big focus. Are you also looking at some of these developing regions, because blockchain itself has a huge potential in these markets as well? You're covering some of the US, and you're going to announce some new things coming. Looking forward to that. But yeah, let's talk about going really global. What's the plan there?
Yeah, I mean, the technology is intended to be global. The community already is global. Even if you look at anything you pick out, either OpenCall, there's applications from all across the world. If you look at the TraceAlliance, there's companies from all across the world, and our ambitions are global. It's not that we're limiting ourselves to a particular thing, because supply chains are global. So it's networks, it's everywhere.
And that's why we are heavily relying on companies in the TraceAlliance ecosystem, which do have certain competencies to carry on developing stuff on top of the protocol. And this is our initial aim, to get as many software quote unquote vendors that would be equipped with the knowledge of using the protocol. And in that way, it's much easier for us, or much more sustainable for us to increase the adoption of the protocol.
Okay. And what about incentivizations with regard to devs or for users, or for in any way, any participant utilizing the protocol? Have you embedded any incentivization mechanisms or reward systems?
On the protocol level, we've left it intentionally very clean. So there's the asset only does it's a compensation method between the user of the protocol and the node of the protocol. What we're doing are activities to just boost the ecosystem, like the OpenCall. There's prizes up in total amount of, I think, 135,000 US. That's available for the teams that want to use those awards to build stuff on the protocol. So these are the types of incentivizations that we're looking at to kind of boost the ecosystem and to see it grow. And it's also what in the end, you have to kind of create sustainable stuff happening. So this is one way of helping them create good use cases. Also, they'll get mentorship from the team, technical or even from a business perspective, and then they help them create something useful. Is something that long term will create the ecosystem that's strong.
The best incentive comes from their clients, because most often those software vendors would come to us telling us that they have clients that are already demanding something similar to what protocol can offer. And that's the best incentive we see, and also the most sustainable incentive, because we see that we have blockchain ecosystems that are just giving out funds, but this can work. This can provide results in the short term, but definitely not in the long term.
Right. Well, guys, you sound really confident with regard to what's planned ahead. What are some of the key milestones that, or rather, what are some of the key targets that you want to hit for 2019? Those specific things that you think you can make happen, given that you're already seemingly on target so far and on point with everything that you've planned.
Yeah, right now we are. So what we would like to do is put down all those milestones that we would like to communicate publicly. And this roadmap is still internal, but we plan to make it public as soon as possible. Because obviously there is a lot of stuff that we can talk about right now. It's technical milestones and then business development milestones, but we would rather save it for an announcement.
But we can have a chat after that.
Just call me.
We'll do that. It's because it's a comprehensive set of things that's being brought forward. So it requires a session only on those.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing that document, guys, because obviously one of the things that's very clear is that you're both very serious about building this out, and you're not doing it in a very superficial way. You're not doing it in a rushed way either. You have shown that right from the outset, for-profit has been one of the key agendas for the enterprise potential. But number one thing is that you are open source as a technology, fundamentally as OriginTrail, for applications in that specialist domain of supply chains. So guys, I wish you all the very best. It's clear that you mean business and you really have a team that is leading out something that arguably is unique because you have that revenue stream and you have a TraceAlliance that's building out the capacity and potential of your business and protocol. So thank you very much, guys, for your time this evening. Is there anything you'd like to say, either of you or both of you, as a final statement to address to all of the people who've been following you and want to better understand what OriginTrail is trying to do?
First off, thanks, Brad, for having us on. It's been a great chat and really thorough. So that's refreshingly nice. But in terms of the final statement, I guess I'd say thanks to the to the partners and to the community working with us, and for anyone wanting to join in, there's plenty of channels to do so. Where you can interact with the team and interact with other members of the community, either business or let's say more blockchain oriented. So there's plenty going on in OT ecosystem, and you're very warmly invited to join in.
Thank you very much. What about you, Žiga? What are you thinking for your final statement to the community?
Yeah, it's been an amazing year. Just right now, my eyes are looking at us because we need to make a statement for community about the past year, and it's been full of adrenaline. It's been quite exciting because we were able to visit places, to talk about technology, to start deliberating on implementing the technology, and actually started implementing the technology. And we have implemented technology in many parts of the world that we previously anticipated that we would never visit. And it's thanks to the capacity that was given to us, of course, after the token generation event. And the possibilities are limitless. And we just want to kind of convey as much as we can in terms of the information that we have right now, which would give the community more hope, not only our community, but in general, the crypto community, which is now lacking this hope. And we believe by, when you build stuff, in not that long-term future, you will be able to see a lot of benefits for the community. So there is no reason to give up, and we are tracing it on. That's
a nice pun, given the tracing it on with TraceAlliance. Thank you both of you for your time. I really do appreciate it. It's going to be really interesting to watch you unfold. Again, use case and adoption are fundamental to this team. If you haven't checked out OriginTrail, make sure you do. There's a multitude of social media platforms that you can go and engage with. They are active, and certainly the team is growing. I've been following along with that. I wish you all the best as your team really build this out in 2019. And hopefully, guys, we can catch up again soon, perhaps in next quarter, to get an update about what the progressions are and how you're evolving to be a force to be reckoned with in the supply chain domain of blockchain.
I'll be happy to do so.
Thank you.
Awesome.